D&D Players, what's a controversial way to make combat more interesting? Let us know in the comments below. For big bad evil guys or big solo encounters, I split health in half and double the turns. Basically, 200 health becomes 100 one turn, 100 one turn. So, I roll for 2 initiatives for the same creature. If the party drops the creature below half health, they lose 1 action too, but might become more aggressive, such as a crit at 19, a bite might now also inflict poison, etc. Now, this isn't a novel concept. I took it from someone on here a year or so ago, and have used it twice, and have convinced my DM to use it in their campaigns too. I do all my rolls in front of my DM screen, instead of behind it, so my players can see how unlucky they really are. Yes, Shannon, that was a real crit. See? In some encounters, I give the players a trolley problem. This way, they can hang themselves with the rope that I provide. I've started making combat encounters require more things than clearing enemies. Instead of mowing down the enemies, they have to kill them and stop the ones at the back from executing the hostages immediately. They have to kill enemies and solve a puzzle or something bad happens. Not sure why it would make anyone mad though. I stop balancing encounters when players hit level 5. There just may be monsters out there that wholly outclass you, and you shouldn't fight them head on. Conversely, you may find yourself accosted by Mook-level thugs and Baz Draconians, even if you're in 3rd or 4th tier of play. I only take care to balance 1st tier play because a stray crit from a goblin can't kill, let alone a stronger monster. For me, I feel like this is going against a lot of what I hear from other DMs. I like to have many more numerous, but weaker enemies. Usually fairly simple, can only really do 1 or 2 different attacks, and plan out how they're going to work together to fight the party. Really quick, snappy turns keep the combat fast-paced, and even though you can have potentially up to 14 to 20 enemies on the map, you still spend most of the time on the player's turns. I use D&D 4th edition minions constantly. My players like it. It makes combat move more as they are forced to cleave through a few enemies. My 1 HP guys that deal a set 5 or 10 damage speed things up. My favorite encounter was my Necromancer that resummoned 4 to 8 skeletons each turn. I am half tempted to implement shifting too. My current frustration with 5th edition combat is the way everything is so static. Move up to giant, giant hits you. You hit giant, repeat until death. I try to give more enemies free move actions that avoid opportunity attacks, like gnolls or whatever. Anyways, 4th edition combat was much more tactical in terms of movement, and I try to achieve that. I would give my players a story point to reward them for their thematic skill for describing or articulating their moves and actions. This story point allowed the players to control the outcome of a battle or social interaction only once per session. For example, a player used his skills and rolled very high and was able to articulate himself with a long, inspiring speech to rally the other players in character instead of me having to describe what he says. I only use this to inspire their imagination amongst themselves instead of me having to do all the work. Unless it's meant to be a climactic boss fight, I like to put something in the environment that the players can pick up on and cheese part of an encounter. Pushing monsters into rivers, quicksand pits, large objects you can use to crush enemies, and spots for cover are some examples. Basically, a reward for thinking outside the box. I don't balance my encounters. The world is a certain way and they interact with it. If they get trounced, well, they should have run. Life isn't a collection of increasingly more difficult challenges. Why should my encounters be that way? Dragons would never land in combat unless they're forced to. The party was not expecting the dragon to swoop down, grapple them, and then drop them from 200 feet in the air or to strafe them with its breath weapon. The dragon also doesn't care how many of its minions die, so don't think you're safe from that cone of flame because his servants are engaging you in melee. I don't give my monsters set HP values. I track damage against them. and the monster dies when I say it does. I have a general idea of how much health an enemy should have, but any cool move or heroic effort is likely to kill an enemy early. Likewise, the boss usually gets a final turn to do something dramatic, like knock over the support columns. I'm also rather fond of adding bosses that are just invulnerable, and it turns the encounter into more of a survival puzzle rather than a fair fight. This has proved to be very rewarding when the party finally finds the enemy's true weakness and slays an overconfident foe who thought himself immortal. Possibly a hot take, but I don't really bother at all with planning out combat encounters. This seems to be a theme in this episode. Obviously, if we're playing a module like, say, Lost Mines of Phandelver, I still use the book as a base, guardrails if you will, for my more sandboxy style of DMing. But do I care that a goblin has a 15 AC and 7 HP? Nah. Player gets excited, describes what they want to do, but rolls a 12? Sure, it still hits. That goblin now has an AC of 10. Why not? Player gets a crit, but NPC would live by a few HP? They die anyway. Why not? Players having fun is what matters. So if they get ambushed by 10 goblins and kill 5, but everyone is now down to half health, the rest will run away. I've been playing games, board games, video games, TTRPGs, etc. for most of my life. I've come to the conclusion that everything is more fun and interesting when fate is weighed towards the players, both good and bad. The little things add up quick though, so it should be mostly positive. But that PC gets a crit fail trying to take a swing at the current big bad, you bet that bastard is gonna slap back and possibly get them onto death saves. The game should be fun to play, but not a cakewalk. But not so hard it's fucking Dark Souls. The big moments, like saving an NPC, or taking out a cult leader, those are more impactful if those are the moments that get risky rather than almost dying every other combat encounter because a pack of wolves all rolled nat 20s and eat the party. I'm the DM. Fate's what I make it, and I want my table to want to play the next session because that means everyone is having fun and engaged. Wave encounters. Ooh, wall of text incoming! But TLDR, break your encounters up into multiple smaller waves and run them in quick succession without rests in between. It makes encounter balancing easier and lets you do it on the fly in real time without obvious fudging, and aligns with how most people, in my experience, run games narratively with the mathematical expectations of the system. So, first, a big preamble. I have a lot of strong, particular, and apparently occasionally unpopular opinions regarding the right way to run a D&D game, and a big one for me is that I believe wholeheartedly in encounter balancing. I think one of the DM's primary responsibilities in the group is maintaining the narrative flow of the game. I also believe that the PCs are supposed to be the protagonists and heroes of the story. As a result, I think that one of my jobs is to make sure that an encounter's difficulty matches its narrative significance. And I think that DMs that don't give any thought to encounter balance or run games where every encounter has a genuine chance of player death in the name of gritty realism are some combination of lazy, vindictive, and missing the entire fucking point of playing a fantasy game. I'm not trying to kill my party. I don't want my players to die pointlessly. Dying fighting a big bad at an inflection point in the narrative can be cool and meaningful, but dying to random, narratively inconsequential bandits in the woods feels shitty. So, I don't put my players in situations where that is an actual possibility. I only want PC death to ever happen in narratively meaningful moments or as a punishment for particularly stupid behavior that I'm actively trying to discourage. Otherwise, if my party ends their day at less than 30% of their health and most of their resources expended, I feel like I've done my job. I like when my players are invested in their characters' individual narrative arcs and that of the group. And find that when you run games where there's a meaningful chance of dying to, like, I don't know, a random dragon you weren't aware of because you accidentally stumbled into a cave you weren't properly leveled for, like this is a fucking MMO, and the world is an uncaring and unfair place and you should have ran, people make shallower, less interesting characters. That all said, I think one of the biggest issues with D&D combat is that the whole balance or resource pool aspect is designed around the expectation that your party is engaging in a number of daily encounters that no party I have ever run or been a part of has ever consistently hit. Like, the whole adventuring day concept is just poorly designed. And if your party is going into every combat at full health and with most of their resources, guess what? They're going to mop the floor with any encounter designed using the official encounter balancing guidance. And that's not great either, because encounters that are too easy are boring. But if you overtune your encounters too much, either by throwing in monsters with a much higher CR than your party is supposed to be fighting, or by adding more enemies, you meaningfully increase the chance of PC death in the former case because the monsters will be doing more damage per attack relative to any individual character's health maximum for their level, and have a higher AC than they can consistently hit. And in the latter case, by tipping the action economy too far in favor of the enemy. I've found that wave-based encounters are a good solution to this dilemma. Basically, I break a single narrative encounter up into waves that are effectively 2 to 4 smaller encounters, each balanced using a combination of the Quick Matchups guide from Xanathar's, which I think is way better than the tables in the DMG for this purpose, and my own experience with that particular group, and run them back to back, without allowing time for short rests in between. This offers a couple of advantages. Firstly, each wave encounter stays level appropriate and the action economy is balanced between the party and the enemies. Secondly, you can technically hit the 4 to 8 encounters per adventuring day expectation without having to come up with 4 to 8 distinct narrative reasons for your party to be fighting some shit in one day. And this results in party resource depletion happening in a way that better aligns with the intended math of the system, without having to turn every adventure into a dungeon crawl. Third, you can adjust your combat difficulty in real time without making it obvious that you're fudging things. Like, I don't know, I think most DMs, the ones that aren't actively trying to kill their players anyway, have been in the situation where you design an encounter that isn't intended to be super consequential, but of particularly good or bad dice rolls in one direction, the monsters end up really fucking up the party in a way you didn't intend. And yeah, running is always a valid option, but I've found that no party is ever really on the same page, such as fleeing. There are always some players at every table that are fine going out in a blaze of glory and rolling a new character and some that aren't, and there's never like a meta-level consensus on what the group should do. And like I said earlier, unless the encounter is a meaningful narrative climax, PC death will feel bad, particularly if it's one of those players that wanted to flee but didn't because they wanted to go along with whatever the larger group was doing. And in situations like that, I think it's fine for the DM to fudge rolls or mess with monsters' HP or whatever, but it is immersion breaking when the players can tell, and the players will be able to tell. But if you run your encounters as waves, you can prepare 1 or 2 more waves than you think you'll need to make the encounter appropriately challenging, and then either run fewer waves than you intended if the party performs worse than expected, or throw an extra one in if they do better. And the players will never know how many waves were supposed to be in the combat because the answer is just however many they were required to feel right. So yeah, waves are great. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Hey, Ryan Von VA here, happy to have you. Speaking of happy to have you, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, let us know in the comments below. What is one potentially controversial thing that you do when you're designing combat encounters to make them a little bit more interesting? And if you ever want to support the channel, please make sure to join our membership program and support us on all of our individual socials too. We love you all. We want everyone out there to keep on keeping on, no matter how tough the world gets. Toodaloo, be safe.